Hello and welcome to the Child Welfare Capacity Building Center for States Perspectives on Youth Engagement webinar. Today's call is being recorded. Before we begin, I would like to turn it over to Christy Stankovich of the center.
Hi, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be interactive, which includes several polling questions. All attendees will be muted for the duration of the webinar. However, we encourage you to type any questions into the chat pod. You're also able to access resources in the web links pod on your lower right. If you have any technical difficulties during the presentation, please contact Shante Bullock at the email address listed on the screen. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Hudson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Hudson. I'm the Program Area Manager for Youth Development with the Center for States. Before we begin getting into the content of our webinar today, I'd like to run through a few things with all of you. First is just an overview of our agenda. We're going to start with some introductions of the presenters you'll be hearing from today, followed by some information on the collaboration and the capacity building collaborative. Then we'll talk about engagement of youth and young adults across systems and states. We'll talk about youth voices at the grassroots level. We'll also talk about engaging youth in federal programs, and then specifically hear from Utah on engaging youth in that state. We'll follow that up with the questions and answers period at the end. So going to introductions, myself, Matt Hudson, as I mentioned, Program Area Manager for Youth Development with the Center for States. We also have today Liz Squibb, Child Welfare Consultant at Squibb Solutions, Lupe Tovar, the Reviewers Coordinator with JBS International, Matt Rosen, Executive Director of Foster Youth in Action, and Crystal Vail, the Adolescent Services Program Administrator for the state of Utah. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the webinar goals that we have for today. So our goal is that at the end of this webinar, participants will be able to increase their knowledge and understanding of how to engage youth and young adults, understand use of specific strategies that support youth engagement, and discuss some examples from states and jurisdictions. And so, as I mentioned, this webinar is being brought to you by the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative, and we wanted to provide some background information on the collaborative and the Center for States. In October 2014, ICF International was awarded a contract by the United States Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families Children's Bureau to establish what is now the new Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative. The Center for States, the Center for Tribes, and the Center for Courts are the partners who form the Capacity Building Collaborative that consolidates services that had previously been provided by the National Child Welfare Resource Centers. This consolidation increases coordination, leverages resources, and provides more strategic service provision. Our goals are to work with partners and jurisdictions to support capacity building and lead to improved outcomes for children and families. We do this by partnering with states, territories, tribes, and courts to identify, design, and implement innovative solutions that meet the unique needs of each jurisdiction. Specifically, the Center for States serves state and territorial public child welfare agencies in the Title IV-E demonstration jurisdictions. ICF International supports the Center for States, where Maggie Bishop is our project director. You might recognize ICF from our work with the Child Welfare Information Gateway, as ICF has a long history of working on technical assistance contracts with the Children's Bureau and other government agencies. The Center for States aims to provide evidence-based capacity building support services that will improve performance and support states and territories in effectively initiating, implementing, and sustaining change and innovation. To achieve this goal, we work with our partners to create and deliver coordinated, inclusive, and well-informed capacity building services. The Center for States is designed to support the Children's Bureau's vision of providing strategic evidence-informed services to build the capacity of territorial public child welfare agencies, with the goal of improving system, organizational, program performance, and significantly enhancing safety, permanency, and well-being for children, youth, and families. So next, we'd like to just take a few moments to go ahead and ask some questions of you, our participants, to see who's in the room. Our first question is, what is your role with your agency or organization? And the options we have are a state agency program manager, state agency leadership, state agency other, community-based provider management, community-based provider other, or just other. And if you click the bubble for other, should pop up a dialog box so that you can let us know what that position is. So if you could just take a couple of moments to go ahead and select the option that you think best describes your role with your agency, and then we'll go ahead and we'll show this to the audience so that you can all see who's in the room today. All right, so it looks like if you guys should all be able to see the results. It looks like about a third of us are in other, and I don't see the, oh yeah, here we go. And it looks like others that we have are training, prevention coordinator, financial capability training instructors, managing youth engagement projects, caseworkers, youth specialists. One of my program area advisors that works with me, I think I know who that is. So that's great. And so then we have one more polling question for you as well. And this one is, how long have you been working to effectively engage youth and young adults in your work? And our options are less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, or more than 10 years. So again, if you take a few moments to go ahead and select the option that you think best represents how long you've been working to engage youth, and then we'll take just a moment to review and see what kind of experience we have here in the audience today. All right, so it looks like, again, we have a little over a third this time, 41%, that have more than 10 years working to engage youth, 22% 5 to 10 years, 11% 3 to 5 years, 15% 1 to 3 years, and only 8% that have less than 1 year. And I think that's really great. It's really awesome to see that that we have so much experience in this audience today so that we can bring you the information in our presentation. And so with that, I mentioned a few slides ago during brief introductions our presenters for today. And so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Liz Squibb, a child welfare consultant at Squibb Solutions, to talk about youth engagement across systems and states. Liz?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Matt. I'm sorry. Appreciate the introduction. Since this is a conversation about perspectives, I think when Matt and I talked very early on about this conversation, wanting to make sure that there was a wide range of conversations, as we know that there are several ways to engage young people at all kinds of levels. So for my small piece, and I'll only have one slide, so I won't bore you guys with a whole bunch of slides, but I'm going to just focus on this one slide. And again, I'm going to invite you to step up with me on the balcony level and think about things in a different way when we're thinking about building capacity capacity for states to engage young people. Part of my experience over the last 20 years has been working with a wide range of organizations, from small community-based organizations to large nonprofits and foundations. I've worked across multiple public systems like child welfare, juvenile justice, and behavioral health, both in county-administered and state-administered systems. And I've worked in just about over half of the states around the country. So I've had the pleasure of being able to play with a lot of people and in helping them engage clients. My entire career for the last 20 has been in engaging the disengaged. And one of the things that I think might be important for folks to hear now from that perspective is that as I worked across states and systems, I noticed that when it came to engaging young people, these agencies, organizations, state systems, they all had a couple of things in common. And one of them was that they all agreed that they were improving outcomes for the systems involved youth or their client, per se. Whether they were an IL provider from Nashville, Tennessee, a juvenile justice diversion provider in San Diego, California, a court-appointed special advocate in Seattle, Washington, or even a regional Department of Social Services director in Raleigh, North Carolina. All of those folks I would answer if I asked them, you know, how do you see yourself and what is your role in the field? You know, how do you help? Most of those folks would say we're in a youth serving agency, or I'm an agency provider. I provide services to young people. What I find interesting as somebody that's been doing this for a while, and as I saw, there's plenty of people with 10 plus years experience. It's not uncommon to hear things like that. But if we really want to think about engaging young people in state work, in national work, then folks need to think about maybe considering how they define themselves in their role. Because one of the other common things that I think I saw when I worked with folks is that they would not identify themselves as a youth engager, if you will. And I bet if I ask you to identify your role or describe your work, I'm probably sure most of you would answer in a serving capacity or developing capacity or leadership building capacity, but probably not using the word as a youth engager. And I think that's fine, and the young people probably wouldn't say that they're adult engagers either. So I think that's actually right. But in order to move from conversations where the young people are just the client and actually can be a part of discussions and capacity building for agencies and organizations, the first thing folks need to think about is a process. And that process can be just as simple as a conversation about effective strategies for helping both young people and adults redefine their roles so that the young people no longer or won't just stay as a service recipient, but they will also feel like a system changer. And in order to do those kind of conversations, those require preparation, intentional work. They're not easy, and I'm sure those of you that have been doing it for a while know that, conversations or partnerships, like I like to call them, are not easily achieved, but when it is, it's a great payoff. In fact, all the research suggests that when young people are actively engaged in social change efforts, that they build all those kind of strengths and skills with leadership. And even when you're asking young people to be involved with systems improvement or systems change efforts, they deepen their knowledge and understanding of issues and root causes, and therefore they become even a better self-advocate for themselves. Building those kind of skill sets with young people won't happen. It doesn't happen by chance, especially for young people that are in place in public systems. And I think we're all probably familiar with recent adolescent brain research that clearly shows that the opportunity to act on those passions or to use those skill sets is so critical for this population. I think it's also important to know that when young people are connected to those programs and organizations that have effective strategies for engaging young people, both the systems or that organization and the young person are more successful in the outcomes that they're looking for, which again, I think we all agree is improving the outcomes for the young people that have been connected to systems. So if you're going to hear more about strategies because, the folks that are coming up, getting ready to talk next are going to be able to talk about some of that stuff that happens on the dance floor where the good stuff happens. But if you'll stay at the balcony level with me and continue to think about how systems and partnering agencies must consider culture. And in my slide you'll see I don't have much on there, but I think it's that simple that if you really want to engage young people authentically, you've got to consider your culture or your foundation. Is it strong enough to support the level of engagement that you wish to have with the young people or the client? Not only the level, and when I say level, do you want a young person to work with you at a neighborhood level? Do you want them to work with you at a state level? Would you like for them to do some national level work? Or the type of work, policy advocacy, community mobilizing, youth advisory boards, etc. So I think it's important to make sure that organizations, systems, and states ask themselves the tough questions about whether or not they really have the kind of infrastructure ready to go. And when I say infrastructure, I'm certainly not talking about bricks and mortar. I'm literally talking about what are you doing in your processes or in culture? How are you intentionally trying to put a set of policies and practices together that can be helpful? So I'm going to give you just two quick examples, and then I'm just going to wrap up really quick about moving across systems. One of the folks that I worked with were the folks at the Juvenile Law Center in Pennsylvania. It's one of the oldest nonprofit public interest law firms for the children in the country. Jennifer Polk-Kempner, their child welfare policy director, and I talked, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago about engaging young people in some discussions. And when I say she got it, and it was, and you know, it's a law center, so they're supposed to do for young people. So what they decided to do then is shift the whole way they're thinking. Why wouldn't they have young people in the conversations? And after just having a few conversations with Jennifer, she's so good at it, she started doing it herself. And then, of course, they now have an associate for youth engagement actually at the law firm. So they began to think about how their processes and their structures will allow for them to have the voice of the client in. Foster Forward is another example, and I wanted to try to find ones that are different. And it used to be a formally, like a foster parent association that most states have. And their tagline is Empower a Lifetime. And what Lisa Gillette and Kat Keenan, the director and deputy director, have been able to do is pull in researchers and other thought leaders who can pilot innovative programs like match savings account, IDAs, but they understand that success looks different for each youth. And so what they've done is they've created a whole set of, they've got their own a 5-man team or 5-woman team that is specially dedicated to youth services and always hires a former foster youth to be on staff. So there's a young person that's on staff that's been walking around in that organization for the last 7 or 8 years, maybe longer. All of this is to say that these are two very different organizations, but what they did and what I've seen with successful organizations that are able to truly bring young people into conversations where young people aren't usually asked to come into is that they started with the conversation about infrastructure, processes, and culture. Again, not bricks and mortar. What do we have? What are we going to intentionally think about when it comes to essentially authentically engaging young people? And I just threw a couple of questions out because people are going to want to know, well, that's great, Liz, but how do we have that conversation if I'm a mid-level manager? How am I having that conversation if I'm a first-year social worker? And I get it, but I've got an organization that still isn't ready to move. And we know state systems are hard. They're clunky, and it's hard to move. But there are things you can ask yourself, like, and when we say we, your organization, your system, your community-based organization, do we reflect the population we serve? Can we maintain capacity as the youth lead through emancipation or other issues, because we know young people consistently move? Is there a space for youth to bring their ideas while maintaining the overall vision of the organization? And what strategies will we identify to help accomplish our goals? And again, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Because tokenism isn't helpful. And of course, compensation, and I'm sure other folks are going to talk about that as you hear from more strategies about things that are happening on the ground. But at the end of the day, I guess my point to you all and that I'd like to make and help you understand is that the conversation is about rethinking how you, as the adult and the provider, think about your conversation and your relationship with young people. You need to have a strong infrastructure, and there should be clear roles for the young people that are participating in whatever level and type of advocacy you'd like them to be at. But again, compensation is key, and I'll tell you the easiest thing that I've learned about working across systems, because they're still clunky, so juvenile justice, working with child welfare, behavioral folks, young people that have are in multiple systems. Those that have been able to work together have an intentional philosophy and have the ability to bridge the divide that is often involved when young people are moving through multiple systems. So it's not easy, but again, at the end of the day, it's about having a true conversation and thinking about what your structure is, no matter how big or small it is, and what you're willing to do and put in processes, and what are you willing to do with your culture or your practice or policy, whatever you want to call it, and that you're really going to have an intentional philosophy to continue to do and engage young people authentically in conversations that are helpful for them and that will improve their outcomes. That's it, Matt, for me.
Great. Thank you, Liz, so much. And then our next presenter is Matt Rosen, Executive Director of Foster Youth in Action.
Hey, Matt. Thanks so much for the opportunity, and thank you, Liz, for taking the lead and framing the work and providing guidance to folks who are thinking deeply about how to prove engagement. We really need the expertise of folks like you who have been thinking deeply about how to address some of the challenges and barriers to raising up foster youth voices. So Foster Youth in Action, at its core, is a national movement of foster youth-led groups who are coming together to raise up the voices of young people in foster care. We're proud of the fact that we now have 16 members, foster youth-led groups in our network in 15 states, with members pending in South Carolina, Vermont, Minnesota, and Idaho. So our movement is growing and reflects a really broad cross-section of young people who want to have their voices heard. We were founded by a statewide foster youth-led organization called California Youth Connection, who saw the need to bring their youth organizing approach and authentic youth voice strategies to other organizations and states. And we got our start in around 2009, working with an emerging foster youth-led organization in Oregon called Oregon Foster Youth Connection. So our members are quite a diverse lot. We have independent youth-led organizations like California Youth Connection and North Carolina Say So, and others are youth advisory boards within state agencies. Some are organizing advisory boards or youth leadership councils through contracts with states but run by nonprofits. And others are programs supported by child welfare advocacy organizations like the Juvenile Law Center. Their group, Youth Fostering Change, that Liz spoke about, is now a member of Foster Youth in Action, which is really exciting. So our diversity is a plus, and that gives us a lot of great ideas. Let me just say a little bit about what we're trying to do. Foster Youth in Action brings together foster youth leaders and adult allies to learn together, to grow, to improve the work that we do to strengthen youth voices. Our network is designed to amplify the voices and priorities of young people through creating opportunities like our national conference, Youth Leaders for Change, which bring young people to the Capitol, to Washington, D.C., to raise up their voices, to meet with each other, and to have stakeholders listen to the priorities and issues that foster youth care about. And we also work individually with foster youth-led groups and youth engagement programs to strengthen the capacity of these groups to help young people take action and make change at the local and the state level. So a lot of how we do our work and a lot of what we've learned from our partners really has a lot to about some of the sort of the values and the principles that really shape our work. One of the things that when we think about the work we do in raising up youth voices at the grassroots, we believe that it's a human right for foster youth to be involved in shaping the programs, policies, and practices that affect their daily lives. We also believe that young people are the experts, that their experience in the system gives them explicit knowledge about how to change the system and how to improve their daily lives. We believe deeply that not just hand-picked leaders, but every young person is capable in participating and being a part of the change. And we believe that action, participating in the process of taking action, identifying issues, pushing for change, advocating for policies, is transformational, that it makes a difference in their lives and improves their long-term outcomes. This isn't just, and it's something that we believe, but increasingly we're seeing the direct benefits of young people taking action and how that improves their outcomes, their self-efficacy, their agency, their sense of hope, their confidence, giving them connections, new networks, and other opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have if they weren't involved collectively with their peers to take action. That for all these reasons, Foster Youth in Action is about creating new opportunities and creating more options for young people to be involved in making change. So Foster Youth in Action at our core is about helping young people take action and helping them to identify their own issues and make a change at the local and the state level. I wanted to say a little bit about some of the things that we're learning and also teaching, particularly emerging groups, about action. And what we're finding is that there are a series of specific steps that we want to encourage folks to take, and that those steps can make a difference. So what does it look like? It looks very different in different communities, but in essence, young people come together and get connected. They learn from each other through support from adult allies, and then they reach out and listen to and engage their peers, other experts, young people in their communities or in the systems that are serving them. And from not just their own personal experiences, but the experiences of the community, the others in the community, that they identify problems and solutions. We work and encourage folks to select strategies. What is it that you want to change, and how are you going to change it, so that folks have a clear set of plans so that they can take action. And what we see is that young people following these action strategies across the country make a really big difference. That our members, which include a wide range of groups from Hawaii to Idaho to California to Iowa to Florida to New York, are making really significant change. We counted up the number of laws that foster youth-led groups in our network have collectively achieved since their inception, and we're getting close to 70 different state laws. So young people's action is making a real difference, not just for their own lives, but for the child welfare systems themselves. So you can see on the slide that there's a whole range of issues that foster youth leaders have taken on and have made changes around. For example, just recently in Oregon Foster Youth Connection passed a state law to improve savings opportunities for foster youth in care. Right now in California Youth Connection is advocating to strengthen sibling rights for foster youth to ensure that they can see their siblings who have been adopted. Over the last year, Iowa's AMP, Achieving Maximum Potential, have successfully advocated for the passage of 3 different human trafficking laws in the state, including creating an office to oversee human trafficking and protecting the confidentiality of court records for juvenile tracking victims. Policies and regulatory changes are one thing that groups do, but others focus on programmatic or practice areas. Youth Fostering Change out of the Juvenile Law Center in Philadelphia just completed a really exciting project raising up issues around college access for foster youth, making recommendations around practice changes, which changed some of the ways that community colleges are trying to serve foster youth in their community. So really excited about that. Some of the things that we've seen that I think exemplify sort of supporting foster youth-led groups to come together to take action include how to balance youth development and policy action, recognizing that young people need support, encouragement, safety, but they also need a specific action process where they can identify issues, develop actions, undertake plans, and get the kind of structure that they need so that they are successful and that they aren't set up for failure. The work that young people are doing involves policy and involves politics. So politically savvy staff are often more successful in seeing successful programs, foster youth-led programs. We've seen that making sure that youth culture and youth rituals that young people develop and own themselves are critical to young people feeling safe, connected, and like they're part of a family in their foster youth-led group. Creating a pipeline of leadership, recognizing that young people may come in as participants but want to take on new roles, get new experience, go from being a member to an organizer and to a staff person is really critical, and there are new developmental strategies and approaches, and so that groups that think over over a course of a year how to do that are often more successful in retaining young people and having successful programs. We know that safety, consistency, and in particular frequency is really important to engaging young people in action. This work is complicated, and bringing young people together once every couple of months might work for a few hand-picked young people, but in order to engage the broad cross-section of foster youth leaders, meetings often need to happen more frequently, and young people need to be engaged more often. And then finally, really making an effort to not just listen to and the opinions of young people on a particular board or group, but put in place structures that are about listening to what foster youth, former foster youth, and adult allies outside of a particular community or state, outside of a particular group, are really critical to making sure that we're reflecting the broad concerns of young people in care. Liz did a great job of identifying some general challenges to foster youth engagement, and I wanted to echo some of that and identify a few other things as it's specific to our work, which is really about supporting foster youth-led action. One is that there isn't necessarily institutional or professional support or training or networks. That's one of the things that Foster Youth in Action is working feverishly to provide, is a place for adult allies who are often working in isolation and don't have support to find a place to connect and learn from each other. We also know that without institutional buy-in and support, that young people taking action, shaking things up, making changes is impossible, and that the leadership need to provide support and encouragement for that. One of the big challenges in regulatory or policy action is the time frame, and thinking about the work longer term is challenging for folks who are often doing direct service work, and challenging for young people who have a shorter time frame than a year. And that finally, the work always needs to be refreshed, and that programs face challenges because they invest and spend time in developing young people's leadership and capacity, and those young people move on, as they should. So that really speaks to the importance of creating a leadership pipeline and putting in place those structures to continue to build the capacity of young people to take action and be leading the groups. We've got lots of interesting resources that we want to share, and if you look at the web links, you can find handouts on a recent report that we put together, which showcases 10 different foster youth-led groups who are part of the Foster Youth in Action Network, talking about their recent programmatic or policy victories. And the other thing that we're doing is we're gearing up for our national conference, where we're bringing together delegations of foster youth leaders and adult allies from at least 22 different state, local, or national foster youth-led or youth engagement programs for a really powerful conference, October 21st through 24th at the National 4-H Conference Center in Chevy Chase. It's a youth-led conference. The young people are delivering the workshops. They're doing the advocacy. They're developing the leadership of their peers, so it should be a really great conference. There's more information about it if you go to the links. And so, that's a little bit about us and about the movement that Foster Youth in Action is helping to support. And I will turn it back over to Matt.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's always great to listen to you talk about the work that you're doing there at Foster Youth in Action. I want to take this moment before introducing Lupe again to let everyone know that if you You don't have to wait for our Q&A section in the Q&A pod. If you do, excuse me, think of a question that you'd like to ask as you're listening to the presenters talk, feel free to ask your question at any time, and we will address it at the Q&A session after our presenters have spoken. With that, I'll turn it over to Lupe Tovar from JBS International.
Good afternoon, everyone. Matt, can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you, Lupe.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you to the 131 attendees who are on the line today. And thank you, Matt and the Center for States, for inviting JBS to be a part of this webinar. And we're going to provide some background and some examples on how JBS has engaged young people in federal programs. If you can go to the next slide, please. So just a little bit about me. I've been working for JBS on the NIDED project for the last 2 years and have been a part of youth and adult partnerships and engagement work for nearly 10 years with some of the partners who are on the line and some of the participants who are in the virtual room, just so you know the perspective that I bring. So I wanted to just share a little bit about the purpose of the NAR Reviewer Program. Since 2014, the Children's Bureau has supported United Assessment Reviews. The acronym in short is NAR. And NARS, you will hear me reference that throughout the 10 minutes I have with you today. And the program is a contract with JBS International, and JBS is responsible for training, preparing, providing on-site technical assistance, and planning and reimbursement for our NAR reviewers who participate as equal partners on the federal NIDED review team. As you can see a little bit about the team structure, we have 3 NAR reviews per year in the pilot phase right now, and we provide 3 NAR reviewers per NAR review. And we have provided more opportunities to some of our younger reviewers by partnering a newer reviewer with some veteran reviewers to ensure that there's some peer-to-peer knowledge sharing happening there. And so we can continue to keep our pool of reviewers trained up together and increasing as we grow the NIDED program. The NAR reviews themselves are designed to assess states' capacity to collect and use NIDED data to learn about the outcomes of young people being served through foster care services at ages 17, 19, and 21. The hope of NIDED is that states will then utilize the data that's being given from the youth perspective themselves to tailor their programs and services to better serve the young people's needs directly. I'm a data geek, and I really appreciate the stories behind the data that the states provide, and hopefully you all do too. And so if you can go to the next slide for me. I want to share just a little bit about the process we use because the work is really important and it takes a team effort to build up the pool of reviewers that we do have. And it starts, and the 2 speakers before me spoke to that too, the need to really know and the intention behind the opportunity. And so we do have an application process for our NAR reviewers who are ages 18 through 25. And we do have some that we are working with currently who are a little bit older. And so I'll talk a little bit later about how we are helping them in their next stage of professional work in the field. But right now, the NIDED reviewers are 18 to 25. We're transitioning from the young adult reviewer term to a NAR reviewer term to further utilize the feedback from our NAR reviewers and to professionalize their role when on site. Sometimes the term young adult can bring some connotations, and since all of our reviewers have had some form of lived experience, also partnered with professional experience. We want to protect that part of their story, especially while doing such critical work when on site for these review days. They are 4 days of intensive work and intensive hours, very much like the Title IV reviews and the Child and Family Services reviews. So it's really important that when we receive the applications from our applicants that they meet the minimum requirements that we have, obviously being engaged in their state level work, in NIDed or data-driven work in some capacity. Some have been a part of the other organizations that have presented today or have been a part of youth advisory boards, other internships like foster clubs, other groups like Foster Youth in Action or Foster Care Alumni of America. And that's just the national ones. We have had independent living coordinators also nominate and refer their young leaders to this opportunity too. And then we do have preferred requirements as well, and all of that is listed in our profile form that we sent out. If you have questions about the details, you can feel free to email us from the web link that the Center for States provided, and we can provide you with more information on that. And again, like I said, it's targeted outreach because this work is very time intensive and takes a critical eye, and so we hope that the young leaders, by the time that they apply for this opportunity, have been working in your space already, maybe even making the phone calls to your young people to take the surveys in your space. And then we do provide an annual training for our young leaders. Thank you. And we do that annually to train up our entire team together. And we have gone from to 20 trained NAR reviewers nationally, and they cover every region of the Children's Bureau region, which is exciting to see. And just like I mentioned before, when you're on site at a NIDed review, they are integrated on every level. And so a lot of thanks to our federal project officers, Miguel Vieira and Catherine Heath, who believe in this on every level. Okay, if you can go to the next slide, please. So support is critical to the success of our young people, and our entire federal team went on site. So I'm not just going to say that they just are ready. It takes some work, and it takes a team, and we provide them with support even with the team structure. So we, like I said, it's 3 NAR reviewers, and so there's a veteran, maybe one who's had a little bit of experience, and then a newer trained reviewer. And we also, one of those is an alternate to also provide them with oversight on what it's like to be a part of the team. So they may participate on the calls and are there in case any emergencies happen. And we also provide them with training and prep calls, just like the state side would be on prep calls. Our NAR reviewers also are, and we have a private Google Drive. Some people may be familiar with Basecamp, where we share the documents the same, and they have a binder just like everybody else on the team, and are expected to review those in enough time to be best prepared on site. And I think it was Liz who mentioned the importance of compensation, and so they are compensated, and due to direct feedback from them, we also do advanced M&IE, meals and incidentals, at 75%, so that they are, most of them are college-age students, and so budgets, it just helps them with their budget to plan that we also know that they are provided for when they're on site, and we do the logistics planning for them up front as well. And we are available for debrief on site and after, because they are reading case files and things like that, and so we know that it could bring up some interpersonal feelings and reactions, just like anybody who works in the field. Every story you read will stick with you, and so we want to provide them a safe space to discuss that. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. I've mentioned a few times throughout the conversation today that we continue to do program enhancements, and this is after every review. And through JBS, we have participated in 4 NAR reviews, and there have been 13 since NIDED started in its pilot phase. So there's a lot of rich insights from our young leaders who have been a part since the beginning, and we really try to include that. After every review, we again have a debrief as a team and with our NAR reviewers to get their suggestions for the next time. And so we have increased our pool, which is very exciting. So there's 20 young professionals across the nation who are a part of this. And we have increased the amount of NAR reviews from 2 to 3, or are working to do that. It's on a voluntary basis for states at the moment. And so while it's in the pilot phase, we're grateful for the states for volunteering to be a part of it. And we continue to have them involved in the process of recruitment too with young leaders that they may know, and they have started to provide recommendations to. And our alternate reviewer spot was created from our last training we had, where the NAR reviewers said, yeah, no, we'd be honored to participate in the phone calls and planning stuff, even if that meant that in the end they didn't actually attend the in-person NIDED review. It was the experience and knowledge that they wanted to have, and we really admired that feedback that they have and have included that into our program. If you can go to the next. Okay, and I mentioned a little bit about our pre-on-site, on-site, and post-on-site efforts. And so pre-on-site, it's really logistics heavy to the federal and state planning calls, just like any of the other compliance reviews. They are a part of it. In my role, I may send an extra text message or private message on Facebook. We have a private closed group for just those reviewers where we can continue our conversation with them. And we also include them on every level of the on-site review. And Miguel has requested that if our NAR reviewers are comfortable, to have them involved in the entrance meeting and in the exit meeting. And it's just been phenomenal to have our NAR reviewers to really self-nominate themselves for those areas. Sometimes it's an area they're comfortable with, and sometimes it's an area of growth. And so we take it upon ourselves to really be that added support for them if they're wanting to challenge themselves. And so it may take a couple extra minutes preparing them after the fact, from after a day, to help them connect the dots and listen to what they're learning and their aha moments, and just being a sounding board for them and reviewing their notes they've taken. It's just really inspiring. I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of insight of how it is to see them in action. It's really just inspiring. And we've also, to note, we've started to include our NAR reviewers as co-facilitators in our NAR reviewer training. And our trainers are in the virtual room today too, which is very exciting. And we plan to increase that in the coming years too. And that's primarily for those who have been a part of a NAR review, who have been a part of the NIDED work for many years. This just moves them to the next level of professionalism. And again, we go out to all of our reviewers who may fit that those requirements that we're looking for, and then we ask them to let us know if they are interested in that opportunity or not. We know that they won't always stay with us. They do age forward past 25, and so we do wish them well and celebrate their transition and thank them for their service with our program. And we have had a couple, just due to life circumstances, going to law school, getting married, having children, move forward in their lives. And again, we join them in celebration of those life milestones. We know that they have to grow into their own greatness, and we're grateful for the time that they are with us. And in terms of post-on-site, it's really getting the necessary documents that we need for our federal project officer, the note-taking notes and things like that, and also tying up logistics, their vouchers and timesheets and things like that. So there's a lot of rich information that they're learning that is transferable to their daily jobs. If you can go to the next slide. Oh, there, that was I meant to do that segue. So we do try to include professional development moments throughout, from the training to the on-site of an actual NAR review to feedback, sending out regular communication with them, and ensuring that they're reading it, referring them back to documents we may have sent them, or resending them as a courtesy to them. And we also help them with bulleting out some of the skill sets that they've learned while they've been an NAR reviewer, so that they can put that on their resume. And that's where that terminology, NAR reviewer, as opposed to young adult reviewer, may also strengthen in a resume and in how they report out the work that they've done with us. And some of them have given us critical feedback on some of our training materials and content, have been a part of some other work we're doing in other projects within JBS. And so every time we try to help them to formulate the skill sets that they're learning, which is really great for their resumes as they move forward. And then if they need us as a contact for when they're looking for jobs, they can include our email in the work that they do with us. And just to speak a little bit, I'm not sure where I'm at time, the last bullet is excited to share that we have had some of our NAR reviewers apply and be approved to be Child and Family Services reviews, which is so exciting and historic. And JBS has done a lot of work with looking through the logistics and what works for young professionals and how we support them in moving into different opportunities that have less oversight. By the time that they are a Child and Family Services review, they do that on their own. So with the NAR reviews, we may call and text and private message them on Facebook. We're there on site with them as technical assistants. And with the Child and Family Services review, it may be another member of the JBS team, but that's more self-regulated by the time they're a Child and Family Services review. And we're just really excited that multiple professionals with former lived experience are now federal Child and Family Services reviewers. And they know that's all their title is when they are on the field. And what I've heard from them is that it's just like a full circle moment, that their resume and credentials have been approved by the Children's Bureau, just like everyone else in the Child and Family Services review pool, and just how phenomenal that is. When with the NIDed reviews, it's pretty apparent when on site that they're the youngest member of our team. And so we use concepts like strategic sharing and ways to introduce themselves to protect their stories. By the time they are working on this federal level, their stories matter and may anchor them into the work, but it's really their professionalism and dedication to the field that speaks volumes when on site. And the tiered perspectives that they have is just, it brings so much richness to the conversations when we are on site. Okay, if we can move forward. So thank you everybody for your time. It was really a pleasure to share about the work that we do with the NIDed reviews at JBS. We do a lot more, the Title IV-E, and we do the Child and Family Services reviews. If you have any questions or if you have any young leaders that you would like to recommend, feel free to email us by the link that we have in the web links box. We also have a Child and Family Services review fact sheet that the Children's Bureau created, if you would like to take a look at that. The thing is, when you click on that link, it'll be the last fact sheet on that page that comes up. And JBS International is also on Facebook and Twitter for you social media fans out there. And if you have any questions for me directly, my email is also on there. So thank you for your time, and I'll pass the mic back to Matt.
Great. Thank you so much, Lupe. And Lupe, just so you know, we got a few questions about some of the specifics about the way that you recruit, so we'll get to those in the question and answer session here in a little bit.
Okay, great.
Great.
Great,
and
thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. And so moving on to our next presenter, Crystal Vail from Utah.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. And before I start, I just wanted to kind of close the loop on what Lupe was saying about the NAR reviewers. We just recently had our NITED review, and we had several of her reviewers and herself as well at our review. And I thought their insight and their involvement in that process was invaluable. And so I think it's an exceptional program. So when you do have a review coming up and you see them coming, I think you're going to enjoy that experience. So now we're going to talk about engaging youth from the state level. As we mentioned, I'm the Adolescent Services Program Administrator for the state of Utah. That some of you might know me as the IL coordinator or the CHAFE coordinator. So I control that at the state level. Our programs are our kids in our program are 14 years and older. And it's not so much a program, that's probably a misnomer. It's more services that are available to youth. I want to talk about two specific positions that we have in the state of Utah that we feel are beneficial in engaging youth. So if you notice on the map to the right, we're broken up into regions. And in each of those regions, we have two specialty positions. The first one is the Transition to Adult Living Coordinator, the TAL coordinator. And the second one is Higher Education Navigator, the HEN. So the Transition to Adult Living Coordinator, TAL, we're going to use that term from now on. Okay, thanks. The TAL coordinator is responsible for identifying and engaging youth age 14 and older in their regions. The way they accomplish this is we have a database for the statewide. They can go into that database called SAFE, and they can bring up a list of all the youth in their region who are 14 or older. They can break it down by different ages. They can look at what cities, what zip codes they're in. They can break that down. And so they look at that data first, and they identify the youth. Then they contact the case managers for those youth and ask if they can attend their child and family team meetings. So those are meetings that happen at minimum every 3 to 6 months on a case, and all the members of the team come together. Case manager, therapist, school, whoever is involved with that youth. Also make sure that the TAL coordinator, and then also we're going to talk about the HEN. The HEN will be there as well. They come to that meeting. And so it's a different voice at the table other than the caseworker or the parent. We focus more, not so much on the day-to-day parts of the job or the case, but looking at really what are the educational goals, what are the transition goals, what's the permanency goals for this youth. We're another person at that table to help them. The other nice thing about having the TAL coordinator at the meetings is this is where they can start engaging with the youth. They can get to know them, put a face to a name, start learning more about what their history is, hear their story, really figure out how can they support them with independent living skills or TAL or CHAFE funds, whatever supports they need while they're still in foster care. So they're a part of that team. The other thing that a TAL coordinator does is they develop and teach skill building classes. So we really look at some of that NITED data, and we survey our youth to really find out in the KC Life Skills Assessment, we look at those to really see what skills are needed, what do the youth need in that area, and then we'll build classes to support that. The other thing we do is also connect with community resources. So if we see that our kids need a skill, or we feel like we have a group of kids who are very interested in like an art program, then we will find those in the community and we'll support and set up activities, groups for them to get with. For example, in one city, a local art program was doing some community-based classes, and they invited our youth to come to that. So they learned art skills, but then they also learned social skills, and they build a relationship with the community partner. Okay, next. the next slide. The other thing that they do is we have both region and state youth councils. So in each region, there is a youth advisory council, youth council, and the TAL coordinator is the mentor for that council. So again, they identify the youth in that area that are in that age group, and they invite all of them. We send out letters, we notify through Facebook, social media. We find ways to directly invite those youth to the Region Youth Council. They come to that meeting. It is their meeting, but we're there to support them and to mentor them and to help them kind of formalize their ideas. And then several of those members will then go to the State Youth Council. And the TAL coordinator is responsible for transportation is huge. And so that's usually a barrier for kids to participate. So the TAL coordinator will coordinate with foster parents and different people to get the youth to the State Youth Council. And we even have one particular TAL coordinator who drives 4 to 5 hours once a month to bring these youth one way, to bring these youth to the State Youth Council. So the Region Youth Council meets once a month, and the State Youth Council meets once a month. So, and so we're support for that. One thing I would like to talk about on the Youth Council part, especially after hearing everyone else's presentations about that kind of participation and working together. At the State Youth Council, we actually have the youth there, we have all the TAL coordinators, and we have the higher education navigators and myself there. We're all in one big room to start off with. Everyone has an equal voice in the conversation. We discuss issues that are going on in the regions. We talk about issues going on in the state. Then the Youth Council decides what of those issues they would like to talk about privately. Then we each break into our own groups. Youth Council has their room, students have a room, we have a room. We each talk about our own things. Then we come back together as a group. We report back to the group, and then we identify areas or projects that we want to work on going forward. And so the youth are very involved in that process, and the TAL coordinators help mentor that. Our Foster Care Bill of Rights and our Normalcy Act came out of that State Youth Council. The TAL coordinators coordinate support across regions. So if we have a youth that's placed, say, in northern region, and then we have to, for some reason, move them, and they go to another region, then that TAL coordinator will coordinate with the TAL coordinator in the new region to make sure that there's no break in support and that they have an idea of how they can support them in that region. And then again, like I said, the state coordination meeting, that's part of that council. So the whole thing is about 4 hours once a month that we all get together and coordinate. So the youth are getting together twice a month, and then the coordinators and the HIMs and all of us get together once a month. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. Okay, so the Higher Education Navigator. So that is fairly new. We're about 1.5 years into this new position. And what started it was, as many of you know, a lot of our foster youth, we have a very small percentage that go on to higher education, and then an even smaller percentage who actually complete some type of higher training or education. And so we looked at that and we're like, how can we support these youth? How can we engage them into and feel supported that they make that leap into higher education? And so what came out of that was a grant through the Department of Workforce Services, and it's TANF funds that are used and created these positions. So again, that map that I showed you at the beginning, each of the regions have at least one higher education navigator, if not two, depending on the number of youth and travel distance, how far it takes to travel. And they do some of the similar things that a TAL coordinator does, but their sole focus, primary focus, is higher education and the barriers to that higher education. So they're going to review some of the same data reports. One of the other data reports and coordination that they do on that is with Department of Workforce Services. They actually, we contract with them to do our ETV funds, Education Training Voucher funds. And so they send us a report showing which youth are using the funds, if they're enrolled in school, and then we coordinate that with our list to make sure that no kids are falling through the cracks. So Higher Education Navigator can refer a youth to Department of Workforce Services for ETV funds and support, and vice versa. They can to us. So we catch those kids that maybe are just getting support from one or the other, so they have dual support. So they also will attend the Child and Family Team meetings, and their primary focus is on education. One of the things that they're there to talk about in meetings is to address some of the myths. Sometimes teams will think that if a youth finds permanency before turning 18 or in care, that they're going to lose support for college and or some of these independent living programs and supports. And that's not necessarily true. And so the TAL coordinator and the HIN are there to make sure that the team is aware of what supports and services are available, no matter the permanency goal. And we are very focused here on not so much independent living, because I don't believe we can all truly be independent, but really what are our permanent connections and permanency. Both the TAL and the HIN are there to advocate for that. The next one on there is the bridge connections with community education partners. These partners, we have done some things like with Weber State University here. We noticed some of our kids were going there and not successfully completing. They were failing out the first semester at Weber State University. So we created a class, like a first-year experience class, but more focused towards some of the barriers and issues with foster youth transitioning out without a lot of support. We really focused in on that. We did a summer class to really better prepare them for higher education. And then now that group that graduated from that class are starting their first semester at Weber State. So we're going to look and see what their grades are like and if it has some kind of positive outcome for those youth at the end of the session, or at the end of the term, I mean. Okay, next slide. Again, with the HIN, they support the region and the State Youth Council. They're an equal partner in those. They also coordinate across regions, and they attend the monthly meetings. So I kind of already talked about that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Outcomes, as far as do these positions work. So the TAL coordinator and the Higher Education Navigator really focus on those youth, 14 and older, and really what their goals are. They're another person at the table to support them. They build relationships with them through the team meetings, through the youth council, during the activities. They really spend that time while they're in foster care, so then that way when they leave foster care and they get into any type of crisis, or when they leave care and go on to higher education, the HINs actually follow them for at least a full year into their first year of college or higher education to be that cheerleader and that support for them. So we're seeing several things going on in outcomes. We see an increase in youth feeling empowered to make a difference in foster youth. We have an active youth council, like I mentioned, the Bill of Rights, our normalcy bill that was passed. These youth in our youth council were the integral part of that made that happen. Our TAL coordinators, they focus on permanency along with everyone else and make sure our youth are not just getting the skills they need, but they're getting those permanent connections. We're seeing an increase in youth attending higher education. In some of the preliminary data that we're getting, we're already seeing about a 17% increase in youth attending and going to higher education. We have stronger connections with the community supports. We have a strong relationship with Weber State. They have a better understanding of the barriers for some of our youth, and they've been very supportive in helping our youth be successful. And that's pretty much it. So, and then also the stronger connection between youth and aftercare supports. We have more kids helping that we're helping afterwards. And just one quick note, because I saw a question on earlier, NIDED surveys in our state. Our TAL coordinators primarily do the NIDED surveys, and when we get the list of those that are needing to be done for the reporting period, I can go down that list, and the TAL coordinator will know probably 50 to 60%, if not more, of those kids because of the relationship that they've had with them. So we've had a better than average in getting our NIDed surveys done. But anyway, that's mainly what I had to share with you today. I really love these two positions. I feel like they really engage the youth and work with the youth on a one-on-one basis, and I was excited to share that with you today. So I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Crystal, so much. So we're going to move into our question and answer period, and it looks like we have about a little bit, maybe more than 10 minutes to do some questions. But before I start reading some of the questions that we've received, it seems like some of you might be running into some technical issues, that you may not be able to see the screen, or that the screen went blank. And so what we've been recommending to those individuals to do is to just close the Adobe and open it back up. You don't have to end your audio line that you called in on, but if you could just close the browser window for the Adobe Connect and then use the link in your registration email you received to just open the Adobe Connect back up, we're hoping that will take care of the visual issues that you might be having with seeing the presentation. I will also say that this is the only slide that we're going to have up during Q&A, so I think that the portion we're moving into now, the audio is going to be the significant portion. For any of you who did miss a piece of the presentation and would like the slides, use the contact information at the end to let us know, and we can get you those slides. So the first question I want to, actually before that, let me say thank you again to our wonderful presenters, Liz and Matt and Lupe and Crystal. That was really a lot of great information. We really received a lot of questions over in the chat pane. We're going to try and get as many of them out to you as possible. To those of you who asked a question, we are going to just ask the questions until we run out of time or until we run out of questions, whichever comes first. So feel free to continue to send them in, and we'll try and get to them. So going back to Matt's presentation, Matt Rosen, we got a question that was, what do you feel is the time commitment needed to really support youth leaders? For example, how much time do you think it would take for a state to plan a conference like your Leaders for Change conference?
Hey, Matt. Well, I think that planning a conference for young people that's planned and led by young people, where young people are not only building skills, learning leadership, but also doing work where they're identifying issues or thinking more deeply about policy strategies, is a real effort, and that it could be dozens of hours of staff time. I would say that it's often something that many of the groups in our network do every year, every other year, and they do that because the benefits of bringing young people together over a multi-day period where they get a chance to really connect and reflect and learn outweighs the challenges and the expense and the time of just meeting together once a month. I know from personal experience that planning for conferences like these need to start about 6 months in advance. And I would also say that it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish and where the group of young people are at. And so there's a lot of ways that conferences can be structured that aren't so challenging and so time-consuming, but still also help accomplish specific goals. So Matt, that's my response.
Great, thank you, Matt, so much. Our next question, Lupe, is for you. It has to do with your piece on the NARs, and it was, how does a young person apply to become a NAR reviewer? What are the requirements? Do they need to have graduated from college? And you might also talk about your selection process.
Sure. Thank you for that question. I'm trying to get my notes up from that slide. I spoke briefly to the minimum requirements. It's ages, well, first, they don't have to necessarily have a college degree. We have ages 18 to 25, and they were experienced foster care in their teen year. They are engaged at a state level in their NIDed work through outreach to young people in their state. through contributing to what the state is doing with their NIDED survey. Maybe we helped with the NIDED conference. They participated in NIDED-related convenings, or they're part of the CQI process in their state. They demonstrate strong written and verbal communication skills. They're available and willing to travel to participate in training to prepare them for the review. Experience with case practice. A lot of young people who have been a part of youth advisory boards in their states have had exposure to some of these things in various ways, and so those are the minimums. And so I hope that answers the question. I can copy and paste that, Matt, if that's an option.
Yeah, sure. If
I will
you want to post that to the group chat.
Okay. I tried to do it. I'm not sure if that works. And then we also have preferred qualifications as well. And okay, I see someone typing. And then so we review the requirement, the profile form and their resume when they turn it into us. And we also like to have a phone conversation with them too, in addition to that. And then we determine if they meet the minimum requirements to be a part of the NIDED pool.
Great, thanks, Lupe.
So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to another question. I think it really could be for any of the four of you. I think it may have come up, Lupe, during your piece when you mentioned your use of social media. But I think Liz, Matt, and Crystal, you can probably address this too. They said they think it's amazing that you're able to meet youth where they're at using the social media. But they said that their agency isn't as friendly with being able to use social media, even something like Google Docs and Gmail. So they were wondering what you might recommend or how you use social media in your states or in your work with youth in care that are under the age of 18, and what you know of an agency or what your agency itself might be doing regarding safety concerns with social media.
Do you guys want me to start, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay,
Go
so
ahead.
I can't speak to the younger youth, so I'll leave that to the state presenters. So for our young people, we actually surveyed them on their preferred method of communication, and we do that on our other contracts too. And so we have like a preferred email, which is where we start with the communication, because really when they're in the workforce, email is what everybody uses, and so we start there, and then the other means of communication are really just to further engage them. Some of our NAR reviewers are really responsive to text as opposed to a phone call, so it really takes knowing your young people, and sometimes they don't have a working phone number, and so a Google phone number is free and something they can sign up for and go to a library and use that, but that's not really our NAR reviewer pool. That's just from the Youth Advisory Board work that I've done in the past. For our NAR reviewers, the social media efforts we do are an accent to the professional communication that we do with them. So we really want to move them into what they will use in the workforce. We have multiple staff members that are in the private Facebook group, so it's not just one staff, for example, and that group is really NIDED related. So it's not really personal updates and things like that, and we don't have to friend them, and they don't have to friend us through that private group. It connects you all through the email that is associated with your social media site. And so I guess I will stop there, but you can email me if you have any further questions on that piece of it.
And from the state of Utah, we do use social media. Honestly, for a lot of our NIDED surveys and inviting kids to come to things, we do access on Facebook. We do have a Facebook page. The privacy settings are set pretty high. If someone's joined the group, they can't see who else is in the group unless someone posts something, and then the posts are controlled and have to be approved before they're posted on there. Through Facebook messaging, I have lots of youth that contact through Facebook messaging requesting support and help and have questions. because most of them don't have a phone. Well, they have a phone, but they don't have phone service, so they go to a free Wi-Fi and then message. And so we do a lot of communicating that way. So we do the best we can for privacy. We make sure that if we're communicating with them on social media, that the team and the case manager and everyone's aware that that's happening and are in agreement with it. If there's concerns, then we'll address it.
Mm-hmm. Matt, I apologize. This is Lupe. I didn't speak to the Google Drive. We talked with our federal contractor to see if that was an option for us to use that. And so that went through the approval process. And again, we communicate through email when we do provide file folders for them in there with the documents that they're reviewing and things like that. And so it's all work related, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yes. Sorry, and I didn't touch that. Our documents we just do through email. We don't do the Google Drive with the use.
Thanks. Matt and Liz, any comments or thoughts on the social media or barrier it presents?
You know, we don't, hey, this is Matt Rosen. So we don't really see this as a problem for most of the groups. In other words, most of the groups that are part of our network haven't expressed that restrictions by state or local agencies have created any problems with engaging young people through social media. So my sense is that most of the foster youth-led groups that we work with, including those that are directly part of child welfare agencies, are using social media formally to communicate with their groups. I think that many of them use different kinds of settings to ensure, you know, a level of safety and privacy. I just don't think that you can effectively organize or engage young people without using social media anymore. And so if this is something that folks are not having access to, my sense is that it will significantly limit the ability of any group to meaningfully remind young people, communicate with them about issues, get them to meetings, get them to events. And so it's certainly incumbent upon states to look closely at their policies and figure out what they can do to make changes, because this is just how young people are communicating, and we've got to get on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And I just want to, this is Lupe again, I just want to reiterate what Crystal and Matt just said. The security settings that are now available on a lot of the social media sites are so helpful, and it teaches our young adults to also take their kind of virtual profiles and secure them as well. So there's a lot of skills that can be taught by integrating safe social media efforts into the work and outreach that we do.
And this I just add one thing. I think for me, it's everything that folks said on the phone is exactly right. If we're truly going to move into a place where young people are effectively and authentically engaged in processes, then the conversation has to start, and that means that systems and states and organizations really do have to try to figure out how to get around that barrier, because some of the places I've worked with, small organizations, and Matt, you're right, the other Matt, you're right, it's easier when you're not sitting in a state system, but I think if we don't push that effort, and young people can lead that, but it truly is an important piece of having a infrastructure that's stable enough to house the kind of engagement you want with young people.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. I would add too that I think it's good to focus on as a social media and reaching the youth frame instead of, like, say, specifically a Facebook frame, because I think that technology moves faster than we do. I think it moves faster than the field. I think it moves faster than research and data in some ways. So I think that if you were to focus on Facebook, by the time that you get it figured out, that there might be some other way that the young people are really connecting, and then you'll have to just figure out that one. So I think that kind of focusing on it too, from what is the best way to be able to reach them, like the way that the person phrased the question, meeting them where they're at, I think is a really a great way to phrase it. So
and their virtual profiles follow them. Even if they're moving in their, teens and 20s, their virtual profile is still there. And maybe their phone numbers change and everything else, but their email may stay the same.
Yes. Exactly. So it's 1:26. So I don't want to. I want to make sure that we can get out of here on time. I've got a couple of slides left to get to. There are some questions that we didn't get answered. That we didn't have the chance to have our presenters answer. We have all those questions documented in a report we'll get from the webinar. And for those of you who asked those questions, we will try and get you an answer and get back to you. There were a couple of other questions about some United specifics. There was a question about the college connection, right, in Utah. So we will try and get the people who asked those questions those answers. If we can go on to the next slide, I want to let everyone know, thank you so much for participating. Really appreciate everyone that attended. We had really a lot of participants, and so we would like you to participate in a feedback survey. And as well as by participating that you can get access to the CEUs. When you registered for this webinar, you should have been asked a question about whether you wanted to obtain CEUs for this webinar. That is an option. So you'll see that a window should have popped up above your Adobe PowerPoint slide where you can, it looks like you can click the language there to have access to that survey and CEUs. You will also get an email within 24 hours that will have the link as well. If you don't see it or if you're having trouble with Adobe Connect, we would ask you then to go ahead and complete it. All results are confidential, and they help us improve future programs. I promise it's going to be way better than your typical evaluative webinar survey. I'm biased. So if you guys could please do that, it'll really help us improve our webinars that we provide for you in the future. And then with that, the next slide is our last slide. It's just contact us. If you have any questions about today's webinar, please feel free to use this. Go to this website and email us at capacityinfo@icfi.com. Those questions will get funneled to me, and I will make sure I get you the answer. Even if it's a question you posted, we'll get those to you. But if you want the contact information for any of our presenters, if you have some questions about the center or any of the programs, I mean, really anything that you think you might need, please feel free to reach out, and we will get you the information you need. With that, it is 1:29. I really appreciate everyone who joined. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful presenters. Yes, thank you. And with that, I hope everyone has a great afternoon or morning in Hawaii.